everyone. This is Jefan's webinar, and today we are very happy to receive Stefania Molina. Hi, Stefania.
Hi, Lorena.
Thanks for coming. Stefania will present her paper about union dissolution, partnership quality, and parental mental health, agenda perspective. Stefania is a PhD researcher at the Dynamics Research Training Group, jointly run by the Hertie School and Humboldt University. She holds a Master in Public Policy from the Hertie School and a Bachelor's in Public Administration from Fundação Getúlio Vargas. Her research focuses on family dynamics and social inequalities, with a focus on gender and health disparities over the life course. Her interests include quantitative methods, family sociology, social demography, and social policy. So, Stefania, the floor is yours. And thank you again.
Thank you for having me here today. I'm gonna, share my screen. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm gonna present a paper called Union Dissolution, Partnership Quality and Parental Mental Health, a Gender Perspective. This is joint work with Michaela Kleinfeld and Julie O'Sullivan. And I'm going to present in English, but if you have suggestions or comments in Portuguese, that's also very welcome. So starting from the motivation to write this paper, this is actually based on another paper that we wrote that it's more descriptive and it was more an exploratory analysis, but we use the same survey data for both papers. So here, what you can see, it's one of the results from this paper that I'm talking about, that we looked into risk factors associated with physical intimate partner violence during separation among women. And of course, in the paper that I want to present today, we are going to look at partnership quality and not intimate partner violence. But this motivation came because we started looking at women during this period of separating from a male partner. And what you can see here in this graph, so here this plot shows odds ratios and 95% confidence intervals. And this is our results from a logistic regression model. And basically what I want to show you here is that in model 1, so the green dots, we see a model that we run only for a sample of women without minor children. And for model 2, so the yellow one, it's a model for women with minor children. And when we look here, we see that some of the results are not that we were expecting. For example, low education is usually considered as a risk factor a risk factor is usually associated with increased likelihood of suffering physical IPV. But here we don't find a significant result for women without minor children. And we find a significant result for women with minor children. Both women with minor children with low education and who are not employed, they have a higher likelihood of experiencing this physical IPV during the separation process if compared to their counterparts. And then in this study, we also went to a second step where we do an interaction between employment and education. And then here on the left-hand side, this is the sample of women without minor children. And on the right-hand side, this is the sample of women with minor children. And what you're seeing here in these figures, these are average predicted probabilities from also a logistic regression model where physical IPV during separation is the dependent variable. And if we start from graph A, we see that there is no statistically significant differences between these groups. So if women without minor children who are employed with low education are not significantly different from those who are employed with high education, for example. But then when you look on the right-hand side, where we look at women with minor children, we find a high-risk group, which are women with minor children who are not employed and who have low education. So they have a really higher risk of experiencing physical intimate partner violence during separation. And basically, I wanted to show you this here first before starting the presentation to say that for us, this was really striking results in a way that it seems that, I mean, the literature already talks about it, but parents are really a vulnerable group in this separation process. So if a couple who doesn't have a child and a couple who has a child are really different from each other when they separate, and this post separation realities. So this was kind of our idea to start the paper that I'm going to start presenting now. So what do we know about union dissolution and mental health? Mostly here it's sociological literature shows that being in an intimate relationship is usually associated with benefits across diverse life domains, and also including better mental health, also better physical health. And research has also consistently shown that union dissolution leads to a significant drop in life satisfaction. It also affects health negatively, and also both physical and mental health. And there are studies that shows that union dissolution is also linked to increases in the risk of depression. To think about union dissolution and mental health, there are two main theoretical perspectives. The first one is the crisis model. And according to this model, separation is viewed as this acute stressor that it's only temporarily going to reduce individual well-being. But then after this event or this shock, this well-being is going to recover to initial levels. So before separation. On the other hand, the chronic strain model see separation as this culmination of long-term partnership conflict, which can potentially lead to prolonged stress and also lasting consequences of well-being. So for well-being. So the difference is that the first one has this idea that before you have the event of separation, then your well-being is going to decrease, but afterwards you can recover this well-being. So it's just a shock. The other one sees more separation and union dissolution as this prolonged with something that is related to more lasting consequences, so more long-term. So this is just to have a theoretical background in our heads, but of course that beyond these strains and negative effects of the separation itself, or the shock of the separation itself, it's really important to consider the economic and the social aftermath of the union dissolution and how it affects well-being. And this is also really important because the aftermath of separation, so after separating, the realities are really different for women and men. And there are several reasons to believe that there are gender differences in mental health after union dissolution. And here I'm going to just cite some of them, but the literature has shown a lot of these mechanisms already. So on the one hand, for women, after separating, they are more likely to have long-term economic strain, also work-family conflict, and financial insecurity. So, for example, this could be the case if a woman marries a man and then she depends on this man financially once they are married, but then once they break up, she loses this support from her partner. And if, for example, during marriage, she decided to quit her job or to work less hours, then she's gonna probably have to deal with this financial insecurity and economic strain. If we focus only on mothers, we know that they are usually the primary caregivers after separating. And once they don't have this partner to help them anymore, probably they're gonna have increased care duties and also limited employment opportunities. And then here, I just want to give another example. If you are married, and then if a woman is married and she has a child, and then again she works less or stops working because she's going to take care of the child, then when she separates, it might be really hard to either re-enter the labor market because she left the labor market, but also could be really hard because she already has a child and already has a lot of caregiving responsibilities. On the other hand, men are less likely than women to anticipate separation. So we already have research that shows that women are usually the ones who initiate separation. And so separating could make men feel like this is a sudden event, and this could be more distressing for their mental health than for women. If we focus only on fathers, and here this is linked with what I said before, fathers, they usually live apart from their children after separating, and this reduced contact with the child could potentially impact their well-being. The evidence we have so far on gendered effects is still mixed, and here I'm just gonna mention some of the studies that have looked into that. So some studies have found that union dissolution is actually equally detrimental for both men and women's mental health. And I think here it's important to say as well that different studies measure mental health in different ways. And we also already know that men and women have different responses to mental health issues. So it's really hard to capture this also because of that. So it really depends on also how you measure mental health. Other research also suggests that men, they are more vulnerable to the short-term effects of union dissolution, indicating that their distress may be transient rather than chronic. So here, these results would align more closely to the theoretical perspective we saw before related to the crisis model. So that it's a shock, a crisis, and then you get better afterwards. And other studies have also shown that women, they may experience this mental distress earlier than the men, and actually before the union dissolution. And then here, this also relates to what I mentioned before, that women, that research has shown that women are usually the ones that initiate the separation. So because they already know they want to separate, their mental health is already lower before separating.
Stefania, I was thinking that maybe we observe different patterns because usually who files for divorces is the woman.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So there is also this anticipation effect of the woman that it probably you don't have for men. Yeah. And in this paper, we are really interested in the role of partnership quality. We have a lot of research that talks about the benefits of being in a union, but we believe that these benefits, they don't come because of being in a union per se, but it really depends on the quality of this partnership. Previous literature has shown that exposure to dysfunctional communication and also destructive conflict is linked to lower life satisfaction and also poor mental health. And this really interesting study from 2006 shows that couples that rated their partnerships as low quality, once they separate, actually it improves their well-being. So this is known as the escape hypothesis. So basically, your well-being is already really low because you're in a low-quality partnership with dysfunctional communication or a lot of conflict and arguments. And then once you leave this, or once you escape this relationship, then your well-being improves. And against this background, we have two main research questions. The first one is, how is union dissolution related to the mental health of parents? And does this relationship differ by gender? And the second one is, what role does partnership quality play in shaping the association between union dissolution and parental mental health? With this paper, we aim for two main contributions. So the first one is that we decided to focus on parents. And then here again, that's why I brought that motivation in the beginning of the presentation. So we decided to focus on parents because during union dissolution, this is a really specific group of couples that have compounded responsibilities. So, for example, they might have more caregiving responsibilities, or they might have potential disputes over the child, or even increased economic concerns. And this is particularly the case usually for women. And it's also important, and then this is more of like a bit further away, but it's also important to look at that because research has shown that if parents have lower mental health, that could also affect the mental health or other factors associated with the child. And the second contribution is that we include partnership quality, but not just one measure of partnership quality. We include 5 different measures of partnership quality. And I think this is really important because the concept of partnership quality, it's really complex. And so we want to dive more deep into this. In this paper, we are going to look into Germany. And here I'm going to tell you a little bit about the context in Germany. But as a disclaimer, I believe that the overall idea is really similar to Brazil. Of course, the degree of inequalities might be different, but but the vulnerable groups or the overall idea is quite similar. So first of all, in Germany, post-separation realities for fathers and mothers, they differ significantly. Children typically live with their mothers after separation, and a really high percentage of fathers have weak or no contact with their children after separation. And single mothers, they usually face substantial financial hardship after separation because they have to take care of themselves and also the child by themselves if the father is not present. And in the case of Germany, for example, the poverty research has shown that the poverty risk for single mothers is more than 3 times higher than for partner mothers. Lastly, it's also important to know for this analysis that there are big differences in East and West Germany, and these differences are related to gender roles, maternal employment rates, and the availability of public daycare. So just to also explain a bit this, in West Germany, for example, it's really common that mothers, once they have a child and they are partnered with someone, that they leave the labor market to take care of the child, or that they start working part-time. And this is also related, of course, it affects maternal employment rates, but this is also related to gender roles and the expectation that this mother is going to take care of the child. And this is much, much more common in the West than in East Germany, where mothers usually start working earlier and the gender roles are quite different. So to investigate this, we use the German Family Panel, Waves 2 to 13. This is a representative longitudinal survey on partnership and family dynamics in Germany. We exclude waves 1 and 14 because these waves, they didn't collect the outcome variable that we are interested in. This is a survey that started in 2008, 2009, and is conducted annually. The survey, also because it's longitudinal, it follows a cohort design. So it includes respondents from the cohort of 71 to 73, then from 81 to 83, then from 91 to 93, and from 2001 to 2003. In terms of our sample, we select women and men with children below 18 years old with valid information on the key variables of interest. And here it's important to note that it's not that we only select parents, we only select parents with minor children, because we also think that having a child that is more than 18 years old, you have different or even less caregiving, usually, of course, but usually you have less caregiving responsibilities towards that child. So we really want to focus on parents who have minor children. In our sample, we have 1,875 respondents and around 8,000 person years. So this means that one person can contribute to the analysis more than once, because we are looking at longitudinal. Then we create a treatment group and a control group. The treatment group are those who experienced a separation, and the control group are those who did not separate. Moving on to our variables. Our main outcome variable is depression. So here we're going to measure mental health through depression. And we use the state trait depression scale, which is an index from 0 to 30. This is a widely used scale to measure depression in population, especially in the field of psychology. Our independent variable is whether respondents went through a separation or not, and then we distinguish them between non-separated and separated. And here, to identify, in the survey, to identify who separated, the question refers to the time between waves. So soon I'm going to show you a graph that this is going to become more clear, but we don't know, when we are looking at the time period, we don't know exactly which wave the respondent separated, but we know in between which waves they separated. Then we also consider financial concerns, because we think that's really important for the research question, and to measure that respondents rate their satisfaction with their household's financial situation on a scale from 0 to 10. And here we could have used, the survey has other measures that could have shown financial stability, but we decided for this one and not the other one, which is equivalent household income, because once you calculate the equivalent household income, you weight depending on the number of people that live in this household. And because we are looking at a process that actually changes probably the number of people in the household, because once you split a relationship, you're probably not going to live together anymore. We don't think that's the best variable to use here. And then we look at partnership quality. We look at partnership quality one wave before the separation. And we do that, of course, because we are interested in the quality of the partnership before they get separated and not during the separation itself. We use 5 different indicators of partnership quality. The first one is satisfaction. And here respondents, they rate the overall relationship satisfaction on a scale from 0, low satisfaction, to 10, high satisfaction. And then we move on to 4 other indicators of partnership quality, which are measured in terms of frequency. So 1 to 5, 1 being never, and 5 always. And then conflict is the frequency with each partner's quarrel or feel annoyed, angry with each other. And then here, these are 2 questions in the survey. And to make this conflict scale, they do the average of these two items. And I mean, because these scales here, they were created by the survey team. So it was a decision made by the survey team and not by us. The dominance indicator is the frequency with which the partner gets their way or makes the respondent do things their way. And then here again, it's the average of two items, so two questions. And then intimacy is the frequency with each the respondent share their thoughts or secrets, private feelings with their partner. And then again, the average of these two items. And lastly, admiration. So to measure admiration, we use the frequency with which the partner express appreciation or recognition to the respondent. So as a method, first, we use coarse and exact matching, and we do that to balance the treatment and control groups on key demographic and structural factors affecting separation and mental health. And here, what we are trying to do with matching is account for selection into separation. So in the literature of separation, there is a big discussion about selection into separation, which means that some people, they already have characteristics, even like social demographic characteristics that would influence them or make them more prone to separate than other individuals. So for example, someone that already has mental issues might be more likely to separate than someone who doesn't. So of course, and there are other types of selection as well, but this is just one example. This type of matching creates a stratum for each combination of the variables that we chose and places each observation in one of these strata. Then the respondents that are in the treatment group, so those who got separated, receive a weight of 1, and those in the control group are weighted according to the size of their stratum. And this helps to account for the variance in stratum distribution between the treatment and the control group. And then lastly, the respondents in specific stratas that do not contain at least one treated and one control unit, they are weighted 0, and then they are eliminated from the analysis. But in our case, we only had 6 respondents eliminated from our analysis. So before doing the matching, this matching that I just explained, as a first step, we have to assign a random separation year to the control group. And we do that so we can compare the trajectory between the control and the treatment group. And because the control, they don't have this year of the shock, or in this case, the separation, we create this random year for them. And then in a step 2, we match these two groups based on gender, age, and region. And here, age, we select intervals of 5 years. And we also match on region because of what I mentioned before of the differences between East and West Germany. There is also a big difference in terms of separation rates in the two areas. Here I'm just bringing the sample statistics of the unmatched and matched sample, just so you see a little bit what happened after we did the matching. So here you can see the mean and also standard errors or percentages. So if we start comparing fathers from the unmatched sample to fathers on the matched sample, we see that the control and treated group are much more balanced in the matched sample. If you look at region, for example, we also see that both West Germany and East Germany are much more balanced in the control and treated group, and age as well. If we look at mothers, it's basically the same idea. So if you look at West and East Germany and you compare the matched and unmatched sample, you see that now the sample is more balanced between control and treated groups. And for age, the same thing. So, and this, I bring this because now, from now on, the sample that we are going to use is the matched sample. Then we conduct a two-way fixed effects models, and we chose fixed effects because we want to control for stable individual traits. So genetic predispositions, for example, or even what I mentioned before, if you have already mental health issues that are more stable and not something that will change, we control for that using fixed effects. And then we also include the time varying variable representing financial concerns. And finally, we conduct stratify analysis by gender and also by partnership quality. So this is the first result, which this is the descriptive analysis. And here what we see is the mean depression by times in separation. And I think this graph is also good to look at because you can understand a bit more the structure of the data set that I was mentioning before. On the left-hand side, we have the mean depression by times in separation for fathers, and on the right-hand side for mothers. The white dots, these are the control groups, so those who did not get separated, and the black dots are the treated groups, so those who got separated. And like I mentioned before, you can see this red line. This is the separation when they got separated. So you can see that, for example, from one wave to another wave, this is 1 year, but the separation happens between waves. And what we can see here descriptively is that overall we see that those who got separated have higher depression scores, depression levels. And we also see that women, they have the initial baseline of depression levels for women is higher than for men. And this is also consistent with previous literature that's shown that women are usually more likely to report depression, or like women and men, they are more likely to report different type of mental health issues. And in this case, depression, women are more likely to do so. What we can also see for both groups is that there's this a bit of an increase in the depression levels close to separation, and then after separation, a decrease again in the depression levels. And we can see here a little bit that there is a bit of a steeper increase for men closer to separation than women. This is the first model of the fixed effects in which we only stratify by gender. And here, if we start from model 1A and model 2A, so the green ones, we see that we do not find significant results that indicate that separation has an effect on depression, neither for fathers nor for mothers. And then if we look at model 1B and 2B, we see that also, again, separation, no significant effect on depression. But then, of course, we see these results for financial satisfaction, meaning that if you have higher financial satisfaction, you have lower depression. And this is the case for both fathers and mothers. Moving on now to the models that we stratify by, the models that we do by gender and partnership quality. This is the results for our first measure of partnership quality, which is partnership satisfaction. To work with this variable here, we had to create a dummy variable in which 0 to 5 represent low satisfaction partnerships, and 6 to 10 represent high satisfaction partnerships. What you see here in this graph is the markers represent beta coefficients of the models, and the bars the 95% confidence intervals. And it's important to note that also from now on, we are always going to control for financial satisfaction. So what we see here for fathers, which are these green markers, we see that fathers in low satisfaction partnerships, once they separate, they have a decrease in the depression scores. So and improve in their mental health. And this happens also for mothers who live a low satisfaction partnership. And then again, for fathers, we see that if fathers live a high satisfaction partnership, they have an increase in their depression level. So, so if they are in a relationship that they consider that it's high quality, or if they're really satisfied and then they lose this partnership, then they have a worse mental health, higher depression levels. The results for mothers are within high satisfaction partnerships are not significant. Now moving on to, again, the models stratified by gender and partnership quality, but now looking at two different variables that indicate partnership quality. The first one is conflict. And then here again, for both conflict and dominance, we created a dummy variable, and then 1 to, if people rated the frequency of the conflict between 1 to 3, this means they are in a low conflict partnership, and 3.5 to 5 in a high conflict partnership. So if we look at conflict, is interesting because we see that, again, for fathers and mothers who live a high quality partnership, they have a decrease in the depression level, so a better mental health. And then the results are not significant for mothers and fathers in low conflict partnerships. If we look into the graph on the right, so when we use dominance as an indicator of partnership quality, we do not find neither the same trend nor significant results. And later I'm going to tell you why we think that might be the case. Now, looking at intimacy between partners and admiration from the partner. So starting from the left, so intimacy between partners, we see that mothers who are in a low intimacy partnership, once they separate from this partnership, they have lower depression levels, so improved mental health. And on the right-hand side for admiration, we see that both fathers and mothers who were in a low admiration partnership, once they separate from this partner, they have lower depression scores, so better mental health. And for fathers in high admiration partnerships, and this again, it's similar to the when we measure partnership quality through satisfaction, that fathers that live a high admiration partnership, they have an increase in their depression levels, so worse mental health. So to summarize these findings and come with some concluding remarks of what we saw here today, we saw that separated individuals, they tend to report higher levels of depression overall than non-separated individuals. And we saw that parents in low quality partnerships, and here I'm talking about low quality means, for example, low admiration or low satisfaction or low intimacy. So this is what I'm calling here low quality. Parents in low quality partnerships, they show an improvement in mental health after separation. And this goes with the escape hypothesis that we saw before. So separation can actually serve as a pathway to better mental health if you are in a low quality partnership, which means that that actually being in a union doesn't mean that you automatically, or because of the union per se, you're going to have better mental health. But you can actually improve your mental health if you leave this partnership. And we saw that mostly for fathers living a high quality partnership, they have a slight decline in mental health following separation. And then high quality partnerships, here I'm calling high admiration or high satisfaction, as we saw in the previous graphs. And this could be because separation may represent a loss of emotional support and stability for these men. And particularly for men, separation may come as an unexpected or unchosen event, as I mentioned before, as women are more likely to initiate the separation or even file for divorce. Of course, there is one exception that we saw, which is the model that we use dominance as an indicator of partnership quality. And we conducted a correlation test between these different partnership quality indicators. And we find that they are all correlated except for dominance. So dominance is not strongly correlated with partnership satisfaction and also not correlated with the other dimensions of partnership quality. And here we think that maybe they are not capturing exactly the same thing, and respondents might understand the dominance indicator as something different, or but yeah, we believe that it's something more related to how this maybe question was asked and how it was perceived by the respondents. And lastly, of course, this research doesn't come without limitations. So with our data, we can only look more or less 3 years before and 3 years after the separation, but would be really interesting to have a longer time period to look at that. And so when we started this paper, we started with event study analysis to really see these effects across a time before and after the event. But the problem is that our sample size for separated individuals is really small. And then once you get, the further you get from the separation, the year of separation, we have less data because some individuals leave the survey or because they don't answer this question anymore. So the results become quite unstable and difficult to interpret. So we opted to not go that way. And lastly, of course, we really try to account for selection into separation, but there are so many factors that could influence this selection into separation that we can't account for, either because of the sample size or because the survey doesn't collect this information. And thank you. I'm curious to hear your suggestions and comments or questions if you have.
Questions?
I have one, if that's okay. Am I
Yes.
audible? So thank you for this presentation. This was incredible findings, and it was so interesting to see all of this. So I think my first question is going to be, so I was trying to sort of try to understand how you constructed the treatment and control. And I'm very interested in the process because it seemed very involved and very interesting. I think one question that came to my mind, and maybe you've already answered this, was that when we are assigning treatment and control based on whether they are separated or not separated, what happens to those people who are probably not separated yet, but the relationship quality indicators might be bad? So I was wondering how you dealt with that and any insights if you might have any. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a great question.
Can I complete with another question? I think I complete her. I was thinking that I don't know if you have available data about this, but for example, if you have the information, for example, you know who divorced, who had a separation, but for example, as a control group, some people that they intend to divorce and did not, or if you have this information or something.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. We have two variables, but then I'm going to talk about these a bit more. Which one is they ask, for example, in the previous year, have you considered breaking up with your partner or something like that, which would indicate what you're saying. But it's so small, the share of people that answer yes for that, because I also think it's quite a sensitive question, and I wonder who actually disclose that to a survey, right? Like, yeah, I'm thinking about breaking up, but I haven't yet. But yeah, it would be super. I mean, we looked into this variable because it would be super interesting, but is the share of people that answer is really small. Yeah.
Are you going to comment the B? How do you say bio
Bijayatri, it's a different.
Bijayatri
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, I mean, but it was that people that were in low quality, right? What was it?
Yeah,
And
look, I think you talked about some of the relationship indicators that you use to construct the stratum for the course
Mhm.
in matching. So what if there were some who were not separated, but so maybe had like, because I think the treatment was assigned a weight of 1,
Mhm.
regardless, what if there were some within treatment who also had poor indicators? I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I think we spent, and it's worth looking into it. You mean the partnership quality for both, right? For people who separated and not separated, we have that. Um, yeah, it's a really good idea, and I think we spent a lot of time thinking which variables were the most important or least important to do the matching, and I think that's always like a process. But yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you.
More questions? So,
I can ask another one if it's okay.
yes, of course.
I'd love to know the sort of socio-demographic breakdown of the sample, because you raised a very interesting point about there being differences between the East and the West, which I did not know. And it's surprising that so many years after, the country has been integrated, there are still so many differences in it.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know a little bit about the sample too. Yeah.
Wait, I have it here so I can give you the precise information. So the sample, what we have in the sample is that more people, wait, let me check. First, in terms of financial satisfaction, actually, contrary to what we expected, it was really similar for both women and men before and after separation, and we thought that it would be worse for women, but in the sample it's quite similar. And in terms of the East and West, what we find is that in the East is much more common to separate than in the West, because in the West you're more attached to this breadwinner model, these traditional values of the family and stuff like that. So this was the main thing we wanted to control for as well when we included East and West in the analysis. And then, of course, in terms of age, people who are really young, they probably never went through a separation, and people who are older are more likely because they have more time to have experienced that as well. Yeah, these are some of the points. Yeah.
Incredibly interesting. And I know in your presentation somewhere, I think towards the end, you mentioned that fathers are more likely, like men are more likely to be more depressed after the separation. And since you're also looking at families with minor children, I wonder if it's because they maybe the child custody arrangements
It
maybe.
could be.
It's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have anything about child custody? No information.
No, we don't. Yeah,
Okay.
it would be really good to have that. Because, yeah, of course, here we don't really know if it's because of the child or because they really valued the support of the wife. Yeah, but it would be really nice.
More
Yeah, there's also
question? Okay. What?
sorry,
Ah,
this is
no, please, go on.
there's also some qualitative work recently in sociology which looks at cognitive labor that women do within like households where there's like a heterosexual couple, and often cognitive labor, like the arrangement on what meal is going to be cooked, or when are the children going to go to, say, play school or like after school activities. Everything's on the mother. So I almost so it could be like a combination of various factors, like could
Yeah.
be because access to children, could be because emotional labor, could be because cognitive labor, maybe they're struggling with taking care of themselves after the separation. Yeah, super cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what exactly is happening.
And I think about the West and East in Germany, we still see differences in the labor market participation, female labor market participation. Still,
Yes,
there is a
yes.
difference.
It is shocking, but yeah, there is a big difference too. Yeah.
Yes, sure. Okay. Florencia, you want to? Oh,
No, I
okay.
was listening and I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much, Stefania.
Thank
I
you.
already know about the differences between East and Western Germany, but the other part I didn't. So it was nice to hear you.
Okay. So I would like to thank Stefania for her presentation. Thank you very much to present your work here. And thank you everyone that
Thank you.
here. They comes here in a Friday afternoon. So thank you. And we'll be back after the FA meeting, because in the beginning of September we have the FA meeting, and then the webinars come back late September. Okay, thank you. Have a nice weekend. Thank you, Stefania.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.